welcome to this fireside chat. I'm Nina Stolpestad from Domos Latency Management, and today I'm here with Iain, Amanda, and Magnus. Let's kick it off with a brief introduction of yourself and the companies that you're from. Magnus, please.
Yes, I'm Magnus Olden. I'm CTO of Domos. We do application-aware latency management, so understanding what applications are being used and their quality and optimizing for better quality of service.
I'm Amanda Forsythe. I am Director of Product at Cognitive Systems, and we detect motion through Wi-Fi signals. So we're leading the way in Wi-Fi sensing.
And that just leaves me, Iain Caldwell. I'm a Principal Product Manager within Lansweeper. We are a scanning and inventory technology, specialises in identification of assets on a network and recognising what that asset is and the behaviours of that asset, and giving you lots of other information on the product itself.
Now, you three are joining forces to enable broadband for the internet service providers and give their customers better internet experiences. Now, why are you three joining forces?
Well, we're getting to a point where broadband is gonna have to take the next step, right? We're kind of maxed out the megabit or gigabit, so there's nothing more to gain there, or at least it's being commoditized, right? So the next generation ISP, the ISPs that will win, they need to create better, unique services that keeps their customers and engages their customers and really helps them create something unique, right? So our company, so bringing device intelligence, spatial awareness, the intelligence around where and how you're moving around your house, and my own company who is bringing this application awareness and this quality awareness, is really like pieces of the puzzle that can help ISPs just build those next generation experiences.
As Magnus says, the ISPs are in a little bit of a perfect storm just now. They've got all the pressures that every other industry has in terms of retaining and keeping their good resources. They've got much higher costs, impact of chip costs, etc. on their equipment makes it more challenging. And as Magnus says, it's almost a commoditized product. And to be in a commoditized space, it's almost a race to the bottom in terms of price. And to be able to differentiate, they need to take other services and try and use those services to differentiate the products that they bring to market. And we sit very nicely in that space, working together to help build those services.
Because they really are in a good position, right? Because they've built this connectivity foundation, right? They own the connectivity into the house, but they need to build services on top of it.
Exactly, and there's the existing infrastructure already in place. Nobody wants additional devices in their home. They don't want to be buying these one-off products for everything. So reusing what's already there to level up is super important.
And it very much is an idea of essentially that we're better as a group together. You know, we can provide that device context and information. We've got the details on the positioning and awareness of the device, and along with Domos, you've got the details of how that device has been used, the bandwidth, etc. And it gives an all-round added level of value.
Yeah, because that's a point, right? By ourselves, our technology brings important pieces of the puzzle, but it's still pieces of the puzzle, right? And we still need that internet service provider to take this, and you can use RDs and use that, but to build something unique, the ISP knows their customers the best, right? And they know which segments they want to target, and their country and districts and whatnot. So they really can bring all these pieces and create a brilliant puzzle.
Mm-hmm. And we're all experts on our own technology. So being able to work together and find those areas where 1 + 1 = 3, we can do that better than an ISP alone.
Yeah, the synergy that we bring together is quite exciting for each company. So it's going to be an interesting, and has been an interesting adventure so far.
Great. That actually kind of brings me to the next question, because I want to ask you, why then should an internet service provider come to you guys instead of building it themselves? But I think, as you mentioned, it's the teamwork where you bring all of the different expertise that each of your company has, which really will then benefit the internet service provider. Could you kind of more explain in more detail what kind of benefits that brings to an ISP?
Yeah, I think in the end, they will end up building some of these pieces themselves, or putting them together and creating this optimal package that is optimal for their infrastructure and their country and their users and target segments. But really, we are experts in like very small fields, but important fields, right? You need to understand what kind of devices there are, like what kind of services can you meaningfully make if you don't know what devices you are, right? You can't come with any recommendations, right? And with spatial awareness as well, right? You have this platform that you can build lots and lots of cool experiences with, but we need that. They need that expertise because they're not building it themselves. And I mean,
and it is very difficult in such an infrastructure-focused industry, where the skill set sits in that industry, and they're being squashed and squeezed from different sides to focus on that industry, to then move into what is a more software-based service and actually understand the smaller details that companies such as yourself bring. Lansweeper comes with a 1.3 billion uniquely identified devices. That didn't happen overnight. That took us 10 years. An ISP can't do that very quickly. We give them the initial building blocks to energize them and kind of kickstart that process for them. And the reality is, why would they want to build that? That's not their core product. It's not their core service. They have other pressures from their industry. Focus on what your key go-to-market is, and then use these other services to augment that and hopefully win the race, as it were.
Mm-hmm. And one of the goals with the three of us coming together is to make that so much easier for the ISP. We're coming together to basically offer them pre-integrated solutions that they can just very quickly take to market, instead of having to figure out, okay, I've got these three independent solutions. How can they work together? How can't they work together?
sometimes it's even just the imagination, right? What can you do if you combine our services? What kind of offerings can you make, right? And then you're free to take the turnkey solution or to configure and adapt to however the ISP see fits, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Could you actually give us a sneak peek into the benefits or the solutions that you can then give an ISP?
Well, I guess there's a number that we explored as we started off, and I think one of the initial ones that we looked at was from a from a service centre perspective, and how we help the end customer get a better service from the ISP. We give them a level of device context in terms of what the device is. We've got some device behaviour elements and how the device is used through the Domos and cognitive development. You can see if a device has been used in a mobile perspective around the property, and you can see what kind of bandwidth, etc. it's using. So when that end user, if they have a problem, contacts the service desk, that service desk has now got a whole wealth of information about what the devices are, how they're being used, and how maybe that's changed in recent times. Equally, they've got a level of information around the overall configuration of the house. They're starting to get an understanding from the cognitive side of things. How many rooms are there? How many floors are there? Not flowers, floors. How many floors are there, etc. From a service desk perspective, that starts to help with pushing left in terms of who can resolve the problem, trying to avoid that engineer going to fix a problem if you can get the first line support to do that for you. So I think that was one of the main initial use cases that we looked at. Obviously, that use case can probably extend a little bit further than I just said, but it is key in the service desk market, is actually giving the service desk first responder all the information they can possibly have to actually allow them to resolve the call first time, rather than the expense of second line support, or, as I say, having that truck roll where somebody has to go and fix the problem for them physically.
And that's one of the things we can help with going together and creating this example implementations, right? It's just, there's a lot of information that comes out of our three companies, but putting that together in a user-friendly way, what information to show to first line support, second line support, third line support, or however many lines you have, and it's just distilling that insight into very actionable recommendation, and just going, customers calls, and it's, I saw you had a video conference call on your iPhone 8 10 minutes ago that had poor quality, And actually it was because you were in a location you typically are not, and this is how you fix it, right? And just distilling all that information into very actionable and easy to understand statements.
And the key benefits coming out of that are OPEX benefits, which you had kind of covered. So reducing operating expenses, time that it takes for someone to solve the problem from a customer service side of things, reducing those truck rolls, but then also net promoter score is a big one. So nobody likes to stay on the line waiting, trying to figure out what's going on with their Wi-Fi. So the faster you can get that problem solved, the happier the customer, the higher the net promoter score.
It is one of those horrible feelings. You're on the phone and they said, so what device are you using? Can you not tell?
Yes.
It's the same device I used yesterday. And yeah, you spend an awful lot of time as a consumer walking through things that you expect that your ISP kind of should probably already know. And it's like, you want to get to that resolution quickly. You want to be efficient and you want to be quick. But you don't want to feel as though you're repeating the same information that either A, you said the last time, or B, they should have the context information at hand to be able to do that themselves already. So,
And there's nothing more frustrating than calling in because your Wi-Fi isn't working and just being told, okay, let's try and restart the router. Great. Okay, you must have a treasure trove of other information that you could help me problem solve a little bit better. So one of our goals is hopefully surfacing more information to solve those problems.
That's kind of the next step as well, right? It's the self-help. Right? The same information can be presented to the end user so they can solve their own problems. Because people usually don't want to call the call center, right? But again, you get the same. We have this wealth of information that needs to be distilled down into insight, or very actionable and easy to understand insight. This is what we can going together and help showcase how that can be done, so that ISPs can integrate it into their apps. So self-help and troubleshooting is just there, even being proactive or just reactive.
And that was the second use case that we kind of identified, was this self-help optimization kind of piece that could be added into the mobile app to help users understand what's going on, understand why they're having issues, and then also give them the tools they need to quickly solve their own problems so they don't have to call in and wait on the line.
And it's definitely the way from a support service point of view to go. You want to give the user the right information at the right time to be able to solve the problem. And most users today are actually much happier with the idea of having a self-help portal that helps them fix the problem than sitting on a phone line waiting to get through. And the key thing is having the right information in that portal. Frustration is when you direct them to a portal that then doesn't give them that information. And the information in terms of context, etc., that we can provide as a group actually means that portal becomes far more helpful. There's more utility for the end user, far less likelihood of them making that call to the service desk. Again, as soon as they make that call to the service desk, that's when the cost starts to ramp up.
Yes, and we've heard that again and again of, well, we could, when we're talking to ISPs, we could help reduce the amount of time it takes to solve problems. And they go, could you prevent the customer from calling us in the first place? Because that's very expensive.
You can cut off their contact, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's the most efficient way to go. I mean, it starts at the far right-hand side when you have the truck roll that could cost anything between $300 and $1,000, down to the individual calls that are minimum $12 to $15 before you even get into the clock ticking and actually solving the problem. Whereas if you're on a self-help portal, yeah, that's just the cost of back-end systems to manage those portals.
So there's huge benefits then in reduced costs and increased retention, and also giving the customers features or new features.
Yeah, and I think the self-help is also important because it's a good way to engage people in the right manner, right? So a lot of ISPs want more engagement in their app. They want a more interesting app, right? The first thing they need to do is to make sure there's no problems, right? That's the absolute base foundation of everything. You're not going to build value-added services on top of the service that is poor, right? So it needs to be great, and it needs to be easy to understand and troubleshoot and just fix, right? But having this proactive or reactive self-help just is a very good way of showing people that there is an app and you can use it, and that can be a channel to get more services on sale, right? So
And particularly on the Domos side, I know a lot of the stuff that you do through the app in self-help, it provides a lot of insights for the user beyond self-help that lets them optimize and improve their own experience. So it may not be that they're particularly having problems, but they want to go in and see if they can make it even better than it currently is.
Certainly, and it also starts to give the ISP an understanding of the quality of service and how the user perceives that service. Because not every user is going to phone whenever they have a slight issue. They will, however, quite quickly log onto an app and try and do a bit of self-analysis themselves. When the user doesn't call, and then there's frequent times that they don't call, that's the point where their engagement with the service is starting to dip. And by the time they do eventually call, that's a tipping point in terms of whether they'll churn or whether they'll stay. And having an app that allows them to do that engagement quickly and frequently and easily, yeah, that definitely helps keep a customer for a bit longer.
And even not just even churning by calling and getting a new ISP, but when you are moving, like most people just pick whatever ISP is there, right? But having a good enough app just gives you that incentive to, hey, I actually want that ISP, right? And I want to switch to that. I had that, I was very happy and it worked well. I could check everything worked. And that gives you that incentive, right?
It's visible. You know, it almost becomes a little bit of a marketing tool. You've become used to the fact you've got an easily consumable product that you can see how good your ISP is. If you're having to phone your ISP, you're already too late. You know, you've already missed the boat. It's the same with banking apps, etc. You know, if you look at a banking app, you do start to get to the point where you kind of stick with the same bank if you think their app's any good. It shouldn't be about how good the app is, but the generation we're now at, the time that is just the case. If the app is poor, then the bank is perceived to be poor, and that is a place that ISPs are starting to move to because, as we said at the beginning, it's a fairly commoditized product. It's these products on top that distinguish and differentiate, and it's these things that keep your customers engaged.
That's an important point, right? Because a new generation of consumers are coming up, right? Who are used to everything being an app. Like, if you force me to phone your company, you don't have my business, right?
Even some of the older generation are very focused on apps now.
Yes.
But yeah, so like it's absolutely essential, right? Like if my bank didn't have an app, it would not be my bank, right? And if I felt it was not very good, it would not be my bank. That will be the only thing that can make me switch banks, actually.
But even with this generation, I think we're all very used to problem solving and being able to go online, go to Google, and be able to answer our own problems and find solutions. So having to call someone to find out like insights about what's actually going on so you can solve the problem, it's quite frustrating and it feels quite dated in terms of...
And it's probably easier to switch broadband provider from customer perspective, right? Than it is to phone in and tell them that you have a problem.
Yeah.
Certainly in the UK, it's almost literally a click of a button. There's websites set up, put in your postcode, pick your service, press the button, and it's pretty much all automated in the background. So yes, churn is a challenge for these companies because it's pretty easy for the client.
Absolutely. And if you unlock these new insights in the app that a user regularly is engaging with and looking at like, oh, why was my Zoom call the other day? Why was it buffering a little bit? Oh, okay, I need to adjust things in the house. But if you give them these tools and they get used to it, it does create this slight barrier to just quickly switch when they are frustrated.
I say the Zoom call is actually a very good point because like everyone, ISPs are suffering from the fact, or maybe not suffering, but they're learning from the fact that people are now using their home network in a different way. You know, I personally have worked from home for 7 or 8 years. So I got to the stage where I regularly called my broadband provider to say, I'm having a problem. They didn't necessarily notice it because they weren't expecting someone to be using their home broadband service 10, 12, 14 hours a day. I mean, essentially my broadband in my house is heavily used at all times when people are awake. Now they've got a situation where me being a home worker is not an unusual thing. I'm no longer in the minority. We now have people during the day who are making calls on Zoom, Teams, etc., where the kind of bandwidth and network latency and the level of performance expected is that bit higher than you normally expect from a 9 to 5. 9 to 5 generally during the day, probably most people weren't really heavily using it. It was at the weekend after 5 o'clock when people started streaming movies, playing online games. But now suddenly it's all day long. And that's another challenge for the ISPs to work out how they actually manage that bandwidth and ensure that they get the quality of service. And again, as a group, we are going to bring that context. You've got the type of device it is that's likely to have it, the kind of locations it is in the room, and again, how that device is being used from a bandwidth and so on.
Mm-hmm. And tolerance is an interesting one. So if you look at user tolerance, if you're just using your broadband for things like streaming after work, it's annoying if there's buffering or there's issues, but it's not critical, mission critical. But if you are on a very important Zoom meeting and you're working from home, that, the tolerance is much lower for issues.
And the stress it causes is just, because you suddenly find that you're missing part of a conversation, and that can be, yes, very stressful.
Definitely. So what's your vision for the future of internet services?
Well, where to start?
Yeah, let's start with your solution. Like, how will your solution help shaping that future?
I think the services that ISPs will provide will be, well, there will be a lot of them, which there's not now, and they will often be very targeted, right? It will be for healthcare or elderly, and it will be for gaming, and there will be for video conferencing, right? Work from home solutions. So I think we will see an offshoot of these targeted services that are just for specific user segments, and I think they will enable the ISPs to create much more retention and happier customers as well.
It's certainly going to be a change in this space. I mean, over the last couple of years, a lot of ISPs, they bundle, but they don't bundle in terms of services and software. They bundle in terms of have your phone line, have your TV, have your broadband. Now, I can't remember the last time I used my home phone. It's part of the bundle, but it's not really part of the bundle. It's not a sales thing to me. The TV services, they're still selling, but mostly it's Netflix, it's Disney, these are the start of services that are starting to take over, and actually there's multiple now ad-based subscription TV services. That means that actually that big add-on that would have been sold in terms of your TV bundle, that's now slowly diminishing as well. And that in 10 years' time, it won't be an equation. The thing that will be sold will be the services that they can add with that are broadband based. And that's a very sweet spot for us in terms of how they can manage those services, meter those services, and actually ensure those services are of the right level and quality at the right part of the house, on the right product, at the right time.
That bundles is a very good point, right? Because you see already now some are starting to test different types of bundles, but they're very weak, right? It's like buy Disney and this ISP, right? But it's not, that's it, right? It's just one less bill. That's the only selling point. But I think when things are progressing, you will see bundles that are more connected, right? Where actually like parts of our services is being used to make that bundle better, right? It's not buy Microsoft Teams through this ISP. It's just buy Microsoft Teams through this ISP because it makes it better. The service gets better because of it, right? And same you can do with elderly care, right? Mm-hmm. Where you can add these much tighter bundles and use the technology to create a value add.
Yeah, and I think both of you touched on this, but just the future is broadband-based services. Mm. And if you don't have that really, really core solid offering for broadband where customers can optimize their broadband, they can very quickly solve problems and it's super stable, then any services that you add on top, whether that's from us like a security or an elder care play, well, that's great, but you need that core to be really, really robust as a base.
Does that mean, though, that you see a shift in the future of the internet service providers' customers as well? Because you mentioned earlier that if you move, you just use what's already installed. But then we see that no, actually, customers, they will have bigger expectations and they need the service as well. Is that also something that you think
Absolutely.
the future will be more?
Yeah, I think it's ripe
service-minded.
for people to get so many more services through a single provider. Previously, we did see back in time, I guess now, with the home phone bundle, with the cable TV or satellite TV, and internet is this suite of services. And now I think that that's going away. There's an opportunity to get a new type of suite from the ISP, all based on internet.
And I definitely think we're actually at that tipping point. You'll see most ISPs will try and bundle in maybe Spotify, Netflix, etc. But that's just the start. I mean, they'll look to be resellers of all of those types of services, and as you say, they'll look for other services, be that healthcare or whether that be security, etc., to try and bring those into the home as well. And once you take one service from your ISP, and then you take a TV service from them, then you take a security service from them, that then becomes something that ties you to the service, because the ISP service is relatively generic, and you can switch that by pressing a button, as I said before. But your other services won't necessarily just go with you. Mm-hmm. The new service provider might have something similar, but you'll probably have to set up a new account and so on and so forth. So you do start to, with each new service, start to tie the client in a little bit stronger, or make them more strongly attached to your brand and your bundles, because the bundle becomes the key.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Because what a lot of ISPs are really good at is marketing and having a good sales channel, right? So they should leverage that by creating these bundles, not just sit idle by while things fly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. One thing that we didn't touch on, I know we talked about two of the use cases, but there's a third use case that we're looking at, which is this proactive marketing approach. And I think that one's really interesting. So really getting to know the customer and understanding insights into the household, and then being able to do some kind of proactive marketing to that household that makes it a better experience for the end customer, because they're not being shown offers that are completely irrelevant to them. Like, if they don't have kids, don't show them bundles for kids' TV channels. I think that one's quite interesting.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities, right? From the simplest, hey, you don't have connectivity in half your house, get an extender, to much more advanced, like, hey, you can have there's a security service there. This can be enhanced by adding X, or many ideas.
Yeah, well, the level of context that you have on the device makes it almost endless. My imagination can't go far enough, but I mean, simply put, you could look and see that maybe somebody's got a Sonos device in one room, but within a six bedroom house. So, well, okay, maybe they might be interested in further Sonos devices. Or they may, if they look at my house, say, okay, Iain's not a Sonos person, Iain's a Denon person. He's got a soundbar in his living room, and he's got a Sonos speaker, a Denon speaker in this room, but he doesn't have in the other two rooms in the house. Maybe he might be interested. You start to build up a level of understanding of brand awareness. If someone comes to my house, they'll see that I don't have any Apple products very quickly, so there'd be no point in trying to sell me the latest Apple TV. However, they would see that I've got lots of Amazon and I've got lots of Denon. So again, if there's a new product from Denon that I might be able to add to my sound system, maybe they could let me know. Mm-hmm. Equally, they could possibly see things like the warranty and the lifespan of the product. So each of the Amazon devices, for example, the older ones have got less capabilities than the newer ones, and they do tend to just kind of sit about the house until you finally change them over. But if you've got information on their life cycle, etc., then you know when it's a good time to replace them, because you don't want a device in the house that's not been updated by the provider, etc., opening up security risks. So the options are endless based on the context of the device and how it's being used.
Absolutely. And yeah, if you look at a household and it's filled with gaming devices, if you've got a broadband service that's optimized for gaming, that's a perfect opportunity to send that email that has an offer, or presenting it in the app as an offer of upgrading. And it's relevant to the user. They're not getting stuff that's just like, this is irrelevant, I don't have any interest in this. It's kind of a win-win.
Yeah. And even back to the app again, right? That's the best channel they have for this proactive marketing, right? Hey, we see that you're gaming and you have poor quality. You need to upgrade your bandwidth, or you need to buy our gaming service, or it's an old device that has poor connectivity. You should upgrade it. Or there is a room that does not have connectivity, where you're playing your Nintendo Wii, right? So all of these is kind of like thing that fits perfectly in the app, is great opportunities for the ISP. It's relevant, it's contextual, it's just much better experience, right, for the end user.
Yeah, and you can even, over time, create cohorts of types of customers where, a household, maybe it's very common for a household that has a Sonos device and an Amazon Echo, they also tend to buy Samsung TVs. So there's kind of opportunities to learn kind of buying patterns among households and then surfacing that as, hey, you might be interested in this product. Rather than, you have that household with very old devices, potentially, and very low-tech household. There's no point in wasting marketing dollars trying to sell them on the premium broadband package when that just isn't needed.
Yeah, and definitely in terms of the brands, in terms of refresh, etc. In the traditional business perspective, that you're going to refresh a laptop or a PC every 2 or 3 years. Households, very similar. Most people probably either refresh their TV every 4 or 5 years, or they start thinking about it every 3 or 4 years. And it's the same with other kind of things like Amazon devices, probably every couple of years. And of course, everyone has a tablet and a phone, DMA. Every 18 months to 2 years, most people are probably starting to think about a refresh, and you're starting to get that kind of information, how it's used in the house. You're starting to get an idea of who's using it. If a phone's heavily YouTube based, and I'm going to show my age now, if it's heavily YouTube based, it's possibly a teenager that's using it. Whereas if the phone's heavily Spotify and LinkedIn, it's possibly somebody like me.
That's a good point, right? And also seeing which devices are being used, how much are they being used, what types of services are being used. Are they not using it at all, maybe? Or are they using an old device for older important meetings, and that might be an issue, right? So plenty of opportunities.
And you could even correlate that with, motion in the home of learning what types of households tend to have a lot of activity. Maybe it's a stay-at-home parent with kids. Maybe it's a household that's working from home. And maybe there's, households that are empty during the day. So being able to add that into context of what might be interesting for that household.
And I think, this will be key as you start, like circling back, when ISP starts selling new and more targeted services, right? Whether that is security or elderly care or gaming or whatnot. This proactive marketing is what is needed to sell those to the right people, and you don't need to have a big launch and campaign and whatnot. It doesn't have to be that big of a cost. You can just simply, hey, can we send a notification to the known gamers of our customers when we are launching a gaming service, right? It can be that simple, and it just makes everything a lot easier.
So you come from 3 different companies with different technologies and solutions. Why have you decided to join forces now?
So on the why now, you kind of see 3 different trends that is key. One is that, say, almost all Tier 1 ISPs around the world have started looking at their home router as a platform where they want to build services. So they realize this is something they need to do, right? Second part is that we're seeing competition for different types of networks, right? You see in the US, fixed wireless access is making a big dent. In the UK, it's really easy to switch providers. And the third point is these over-the-top players like your Google Wi-Fi and the Eros. What they do is that they essentially make the ISP just a dumb plug, right? There is no, the ISP cannot sell services on top of Eero or Google Wi-Fi, right? They just become infrastructure provider, and that's it, right?
Yeah, so to pick up on that platform point, it becomes about selling a platform rather than selling an infrastructure, trying to move away from that core up to the platform. And if you take us as a group, we give you the what, we've got the where, and we've got the how, and that helps us put together a set of services, either our individual services or an enhanced set of services, or a greater whole that comes through the 3 different services that can sit on top of those platforms, giving the ISP multiple options to subscribe and provide to their customers.
Absolutely. And this also, just to touch on this concept of a platform and attachment to the gateway, particularly in the US, we're seeing a lot of customers bring their own device, which leaves, as you had mentioned, leaves the ISP out of it. They're not able to. They're just the dumb pipe. They're not able to offer these new services. So this creates more attachment and more value specifically to the gateway that the ISP is offering.
And then I guess a further dimension to that is that a number of ISPs are seeing that clients are moving away from the fixed line cable, that they're moving towards mobile. You know, they're using their mobile broadband off of their mobile to service the house. And again, how do you differentiate in that situation? You need to be able to provide services. And via that fixed line, you can provide a better bandwidth, and therefore you can layer greater services on top. Not quite as easy in the mobile space.
If you looked at Pedro Bandera at his, in Deutsche Telekom, at his keynote at RDK Summit, he says, going forward, our differentiator is not the technology we bring into the house or the broadband technology, it's our platform.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that platform is obviously the thing that enables the services such as our own that can come with that.
So thank you so much, guys, for participating in this fireside chat. And thank you for joining us. If you're interested to know more, please reach out and we hope to hear from you soon.